Lisa sat in the middle of her queen-size bed. This is where she did her best work. Surrounded by the black walls of her bedroom and the dim glow of the fairy lights that stretch across those walls like sparkling spider webs, Lisa was able to shut out the world when she worked in bed. Whenever she was bent over on her laptop or, as she was now, poring through old newspaper clippings, Lisa was in her own universe here. Cross-legged, Lisa shoved her long hair behind her ears as she uncapped the bottle of water and took a sludge. Pizza she had for dinner wasn't sitting well in her belly, but she welcomed the burning. It seems appropriate somehow that her belly reminded her of the heaviness of the cheesy slices she consumed. So appropriate. Lisa picked up an old newspaper photo and studied it. It was a grainy photo, but its blurriness didn't diminish the impact of the picture. Lisa shivered. She didn't think anything could diminish the impact of the marionette. The black and white puppet. The marionette was an animatronic director of the show that used to be put on in Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and this picture showed her in her heyday. Lisa stared at the marionette's long arms, thrown out wide in front of the three toyish-looking animatronics performers. A bear, a bunny, and a chick. They were a hoot, Lisa thought, but the marionette, there was nothing funny about her. Lisa took another drink of water and set the photo aside. She leaned forward and began working her way through the clippings she spread out on her dark purple comforter. One at a time, she peered at them, scribbling down their headlines on a pad of paper prodded in her lap. Fazbear Entertainment launches investigation into an accident at flagship location. Police confirm identity of local child injured in the accident of Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. Fazbear Entertainment confirms child entered restriction area, likely caused her injuries. Local child injured in Freddy's was a troubled child, authorities claim. Fazbear Entertainment expressed sadness over a recent incident but denies responsibility. Local child blamed for pizzeria closure. Fazbear Entertainment announces new pizzeria will be bigger than better. Freddy Fazbear's Legacy location where a child was injured will not be reopened. Kids miss many things about permanent close Freddy Pizzeria, but the marionette will be missed the most. Lisa set aside the clippings, tucking them carefully in the mantent envelope. Then she picked up another newspaper photo. This one was easier for Lisa to look at. No marionette. The photo was a group of kids standing near the main stage at Freddy's Pizzeria. 8 kids, all having a great time. They wore big grins and had a loose, carefree posture of childhood fun. Well, 7 of the kids looked like that. The 8th one, a girl with long blonde hair, wore an entirely different expression. Although she was smiling as if wanting to blend in with the other kids, the girl's eyes were knowing. This girl was aware of something that other kids weren't. What exactly? That was something Lisa intended to find out, because she knew who this girl was. The girl in the photo was Vanessa. She was William Afton's daughter. Lisa bent over to study Vanessa's images. How much had Vanessa known about her dad? If the photo was any indication, she had known a lot. She had known it. Her eyes in her photo told Lisa, but she kept it to herself. When Lisa looked into Vanessa's wide eyes, Lisa saw a girl who was going to take her secret into adulthood. Vanessa sat up in bed, startled. What had woken her up? She fought to throw out her covers, ready for action. A deep, blurry sound made her flinch and wrap up her heart. She whirled towards the sound. Vanessa's gaze landed on her phone. She exhaled. Just a phone. Nothing to freak out about. Vanessa swiped a hand across her forehead. Her fingertips came away wet. Of course she was sweating. She woke up sweating every day for 20 years. Why would today have been any different? The phone rang again. Its ring was not threatening this time, only a ring. Vanessa rubbed her arms and hugged herself. This was her self-calming ritual. She had an overreacting sympathetic nervous system. That was what therapists had told her. She had been taught a laundry list of techniques to activate the parasympathetic nervous system out of flight or fight into calm. Yeah, right, if only the techniques work. The phone rang again, and this time Vanessa reached for the receiver. Hello? Vanessa made a face at an edgy, brevy way the word came out of her mouth. And of course, Mike noticed it. Hey, he said to Vanessa's ear, you okay? Vanessa chuckled the sleep out of her eyes. She looked at the digital alarm clock at her small nightstand. The nightstand, made of maple, was the same one she had in her room when as a little girl. All her bedroom furniture was from her childhood. Double bed, a small dresser with a bench, a narrow chest drawer. Every worn and scarred piece of the furniture in the room belonged to a little girl Vanessa had once been. Vanessa had placed this furniture in her apartment's large bedroom, realizing when she had it didn't fit in the room's mahogany floors, its skylight, its deep blue walls, and its white crown molding. The room had been designed for an adult, and Vanessa had filled it with kids' furniture. What was up with that? Why hadn't she been able to be part with this old furniture and got a new set? She was an adult, for heaven's sake. She needed adult furniture. But that was a question for another day. If she didn't answer Mike, he'll know something was up. Hey, Vanessa said as casually as she could into the phone. Yeah, I lost track of time. She decided to tell him the truth. She couldn't always do that, but this wasn't anything monumental. Had a rough night, she admitted. Bad dreams again? Mike asked. Can't seem to catch a break. Vanessa deliberately kept her voice light, even though her insomnia was a misery that weighed heavily on her. Always had. Anything I can do? Mike offered sound genuine. But what could he possibly do? Sing her lullabies? No, I'm fine, Vanessa lied. As she played the role of a perfectly well-adjusted adult, Vanessa sat up and swung her feet over the side of the bed. She stared at her size 9s and pondered whether she would actually paint her toenails. Actually, the question was an ideal one. She really was just trying to get herself together. Vanessa lifted her gaze, which meant that she was now looking at her reflection in her dresser mirror. Her blonde hair was tangled around her head, and she had dark circles in her eyes. For some reason, those smugs made her green eyes look greener. She thought her eyes widely spaced and slightly up tilt were her best features. She's been told she was pretty, but when she looked at her face, all she ever saw was the fear she was constantly trying to cover with bravado. Her high cheekbones looked stark to her, and her full mouth looked ready to scream. Vanessa realized she still held the phone and Mike was still there. She could hear him breathing. How's your day going? Vanessa glanced at her bedside clock. Abby off to school? Mike stood in his kitchen, his back to an just living room. He was leaning against his fridge, which hummed so loud he was starting to think it wasn't going to last much longer. Not a surprise. The fridge, like everything else in the kitchen, was state-of-the-art, in the 70s probably. Inhaling a tart scent of orange juice he just poured, Mike glanced over his shoulder to see if Abby was in the living room. Sometimes, she sat at the coffee table drawing while she ate her cereal and watched TV. When he saw that Abby wasn't nearby, he answered Vanessa's question. Not yet, Mike said. She's around here somewhere. He hoped she was. Maybe she could check on her. In a minute. Jeremiah's on his way to help me finish painting today, he told Vanessa. Right, I forgot about that. Did you forget our dinner too? Mike asked the question teasingly, but he realized he was tense. Tense because she might have forgotten, or tense because they were having dinner. Still sitting in the corner of her bed, cradling her head in her free hand, Vanessa was attempting to ignore the reply of her nightmare in her mind. Why did her brain have to loop on the crap on her life? Vanessa, are we still on for dinner tonight? My question came through a phone. No, I mean, yes. No, I didn't forget. Yes, we're definitely on. She rubbed her temple. It'll be good to get out. Her tone, she noticed, didn't sound at all convincing. Was she trying to talk herself into the idea? It'll be good for both of us, Mike said. Mike had noticed the slight hesitation in Vanessa's words, and he heard a whiff of doubt in his own. Were they talking themselves into it? Mike heard a scruff and turned. Abby was standing near at the end of the hallway. She was staring at him with a quizzical expression, and she was smirking. Hey, I have to run, Mike said into the phone. See you later, then. With bells on, Vanessa said into his ear. Mike grinned. Great. Bye. The whiff of doubt was gone. Mike was buoyed. So much that his grin expanded to a big smile, and of course, Abby saw it. So have you kissed her yet? Abby asked. The question wasn't fatuous. Abby, who had big brown eyes that expressed every emotion Abby felt, now wore a grave, this matters expression. Her full line were pure. Mike immediately erased his smile. Seriously, Abs, you know it's not like that. We're just friends. Abby put her hands on her hip. Then why are you going on a date? It's not a date. Abby wanted to laugh in her brother's face. It was a date. Mike and Vanessa liked each other a lot. Any idiot with eyes could see it. It was possible that Mike thought Abby wouldn't want him to date. But if he did, he was a moron. Abby had made it clear that she really liked Vanessa. She even once told Mike that she thought Mike and Vanessa looked good together. He ignored her, but it was true. Vanessa was a pretty blonde, and Mike, even though he was Abby's doofy brother, was a reasonable, good-looking guy. He had the kind of look girls tend to like: brooding eyes, square jaw, dark, unruly hair. But both Mike and Vanessa had baggage, and they were letting that get in the way. Abby watched Mike finish up his orange juice. He clearly thought the conversation was over, but Abby wasn't done. She decided to push him. "If it isn't a date," she said, "then can I come along?" Mike choked on his juice. He coughed and glared at Abby. "Gotcha," Abby thought. He was trapped. "No, you can't," Mike said. Abby nodded in satisfaction. "That's what I thought." She gave Mike a "you're busted" look. And she might have said more, but a knock on the front door saved Mike. Abby gave Mike a triumphant grin and flounced out the room. She skipped to the front door and opened it, knowing who it would be. "Hi, Jeremiah." Abby beamed at Mike's tall, cute friend. If Jeremiah had been a boy her age, Abby would have had a crush on him. With longish hair that curled a little on the base of his neck, and brown eyes that reminded Abby of the sweet dog's eyes. Jeremiah kind of looked like a boy, an overgrown one. Jeremiah was taller and broadier. He had more muscle than Mike, but his face was kind of impish. Abby thought it was the right word. Or not. It doesn't matter. He was almost pretty. "Hey, hey," Jeremiah grinned at Abby. "Abby the Abster, the arbitrary horror." Abby laughed. She loved the way Jeremiah played with her name. He came up with something new every time he saw her. "What's happening?" Jeremiah asked as he held out his right hand, palm towards Abby. With gusto, Abby lifted her hand, too. She and Jeremiah ran through their secret handshake, a series of slap and fist bumps and finger wiggles that went by so fast no one but them could remember what the sequence was. Jeremiah had taught Abby the handshake one day when she was feeling down. Now, whenever they did it, even if she wasn't in the best moods when they started, she always felt better when they finished. Abby loved her brother, but Mike was, well, he wasn't a ton of fun. Jeremiah was fun, and he paid attention to Abby in a way that Mike never did. Mike didn't ignore Abby, not at all, but he was usually distracted. A rumble of the engine and the hiss of brakes prompted Abby to lunge to the backpack sitting next to the front door. As she shrugged it on, she kept an eye on the big yellow school bus trundling to stop at the end of the driveway. She watched a couple of other kids, who had been waiting on the road, head to the bus doors when it fully open. "Gotta run." Abby flung over her shoulder to Jeremiah as she sped up to the front door. "Sure you don't want to stay here and paint instead?" Jeremiah called out as Abby trotted to the bus. "I'll trade places with you." Abby laughed. She shot back. "I think they'll notice the switch in school." Abby looked over his shoulder as she started to get to the bus. Mike had joined Jeremiah in the front door on their little house. "Bye, Mike," she called. "Bye, Abs." Mike lifted a hand and waved. A skinny boy, Gus, dashed across the street in the front of the bus. As he did, his backpack spilled open, but two of his books hit the pavement. Abby immediately went over to help him pick him up. Gus lived a couple of houses down. He always barely made the bus, and he was notoriously clumsy. None of the other kids talked to him unless they were making fun of him. "Here, Gus," Abby said as she tucked the books in the backpack. He flushed and mumbled something he couldn't understand. Abby stepped back to let him get the bus first. Back in the doorway, Jeremiah smiled as he watched Abby's act of kindness. "She's a good kid," he said. "Yeah, she is," Mike agreed. "She has a big heart, always helping out other people." Jeremiah nodded. "She's going to be a looker, too, when she gets older." Mike's gaze whipped towards his friend Jeremiah, raised both hands in surrender. "Hey, just saying. To me, she's your kid sister, and she always will be. But haven't you noticed she's growing up?" Mike frowned at Jeremiah. "Don't remind me." Even though Abby still only wore overalls, she wore a dozen or more of them in a variety of colors, and t-shirts. Every day she seemed less little kid and more young girl. Mike was well aware that Abby was going to be stunning when she was older, when her dark hair and eyes and heart-shaped face. Yeah, she's going to turn heads. Mike had already decided he wasn't going to let her date until she was in her 30s. Maybe not even then. Mike and Jeremiah were in their 30s, and he couldn't honestly say neither of them were mature enough to make good partners for a woman. Mike exhaled loudly. "Let's get on with it." He strode towards the blue van that was parked in his driveway behind his gray truck. Because Mike's tiny blonde home didn't have a garage, Jeremiah had agreed to keep their painting supply on the van he used for his construction work. Jeremiah also owned a sportsy sedan. His business was successful. Someday, Mike wanted a car like Jeremiah's, but he needed to be successful first. Mike sighed, one step at a time. Mike didn't resent the fact that Jeremiah was doing well. He was happy for his friend. Jeremiah was a good guy. Mike hadn't asked Jeremiah to help with the painting. He just mentioned that he was going to do it, and Jeremiah had offered to help. Jeremiah joined Mike at the van. Together they reached through the double doors and grabbed paint cans, long-handled rollers, and brushes. Mike's nose twitched at the strong smell of turbulence wafting from inside the van. All their cleanup supplies were in the van, too. Jeremiah opened a can of paint and started stirring it. The pungent chemical smell of latex replaced the turbulent odor of Mike's nostrils. The man lunged in painting supplies in the house. They spread out the drop cloth on the entire wall and set everything up. Still going on that date with Vanessa tonight? Jeremiah asked. Mike laid out 2 more drop cloaks, covering all the furniture in the living room. Jeremiah was notorious of dripping paint. It's not a date, Mike said. Jeremiah snorted. Mike jabbed a finger towards Jeremiah. Look, we just have some things in common, some difficult things, so we're trying to be there for each other, that's all. Uh-huh. Jeremiah didn't look at Mike. He was just starting applying paint. For a few moments, the men worked in silence. Mike began enjoying the slurping sound of the paint-leaded rollers squishing over the wall. The fridge continual hum was counterpoint to the rim of the spring. Didn't you say her father killed someone once? Jeremiah said into a companion's silence. Mike grit his teeth. Something like that, he said shortly. That seems normal. Jeremiah, sarcastic, was thundering the words thicker than the paint he was applying. Who said anything about normal? Mike asked. He was getting annoyed with his friend. It's not normal, he snapped, but it's also not her fault. Jeremiah said nothing, but Mike could hear judgment anyway. As far as I'm concerned, Mike said, Vanessa is as much as a victim as the kids her dad killed. More silence. She is, Mike insisted. Jeremiah stopped painting. Hey, I wish you two of all the happiness in the world. I'm just saying, he shrugged. She has those crazy eyes, Mike. Mike narrowed his own eyes at Jeremiah. What do you mean by that? Speaking of crazy, Jeremiah pointed at the front window. Mike ignored the gesture. She does not have dry, crazy eyes. Jeremiah didn't even glance at Mike. His glance was glued at whatever was outside the window. Mike stepped out next and Jeremiah. He immediately tensed. Freddy and Foxy, 2 of the Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria animatronics, were strolling across the side of the road. Mike felt his heartbeat trip a double time. He immediately got a grip of himself. Not for Freddy and Foxy, just 2 teens in Freddy and Foxy's costumes, of course. The stupid festival. Jeremiah turned towards Mike. Does Abby ever get picked on because of that? Because of what? Mike interrupted sharply. Jeremiah didn't return to painting. He didn't meet Mike's confused gaze. Well, you know, Jeremiah said in a casual conversational tone. Ever since your aunt told everyone and their mother about the killer teddy bears, the whole town has lost its damn mind. Everyone's been obsessed with the old pizzeria. Mike had nothing to say to this. He concentrated on painting. But Jeremiah wasn't done. I heard they had your aunt committed, by the way. He shook his head. Terrible. Mike suppressed an eye roll. Yeah, she said dryly, such a nice person. Mike kept rolling paint on his wall, but his gaze returned to the window. Freddy and Foxy were continuing down the street. It'll be over after this weekend, Mike said. Things will go back to normal. Who was he trying to convince? Himself or Jeremiah? Jeremiah dropped his roller in the paint tray. He walked to the grumbling fridge and pulled out a can of soda. He popped it open as he studied the front of the fridge. The entire curved surface of the old white appliance was covered with Abby's drawing. Thankfully, she's been drawing mostly horses lately. There were still a couple of drawings of Freddy axed to the fridge with a fruit-shaped magnet. Jeremiah cocked his head. So, your aunt just made those stories up? Out of the blue? This wasn't just light conversation. Jeremiah was starting to poke around a topic Mike had no interest in pursuing. Hey, Mike said, I really better not talk about it. He jabbed his roller into the paint. I just want to get past it. Mike decided to appeal to Jeremiah's good nature. So does Abby. Jeremiah gave Mike a long look. So, really, Mike said, just keep it between us that Abby is even related to the crazy lady telling those stories, okay? Jeremiah downed the rest of the soda. Yeah, sure, you got it. Mike nodded. Good. Abby doesn't like drawing attention to herself. She likes to keep it a low profile. Abby was sitting near the back of the bus next to Gus. Even though Gus smelled like a cook's cabbage, Abby had tried to have a conversation with him as soon as the bus had launched away to their house. Gus, however, had immediately buried his nose in one of his books. Abby, therefore, was now holding court with the other kids. Gratifying them by their wide eyes and gaping mouths, she was telling her story of great dramatic flair. Then Chica tried to stuff me into the springlock suit. One of those looked like some kind of creepy doll, Abby relayed. Before the suit came close up and killed me, Mike came in with a taser and shot Chica with the face with it. I took off and ran into the dining room, just as Foxy came off the stage and started hunting me down. I hid in the ball pit in the arcade, but eventually he found me. Fortunately, Vanessa saved me. Abby studied her audience. They were rapt. She went on, but then the yellow rabbit attacked us and stabbed Vanessa. A couple of kids gasped. One of the girls looked like she might get sick. She's okay though, Abby quickly added. One of the boys, Daniel, who Abby thought was cute because he had floppy hair, curly hair, an upturned nose, and ears that remind her of an elf's, because he always was nice to Abby and talked to her a lot, leaned over the back of the seat in front of Abby's. So what happened to the yellow rabbit? Danielle asked. The spring locks in his suit went off and crushed him alive, Abby said. Danielle winced, but he didn't take his eyes off Abby. They say that his body is still in Freddy's, Abby went on. It's hidden in a secret room that no one has found. Sarah, the girl in the seat across from Daniel, made a snarky sound of disbelief. She jabbed at a finger at Abby's direction. You're crazy. Abby didn't care what Sarah thought. Sarah always acted like she was all just that. Because she had long red hair and had the nicest clothes anyone in school, Abby didn't like Sarah. Another girl in the seat in front of Sarah gave Abby a long, impressing look. This girl, Abby couldn't remember her name, was part of the small golf clique of the school. Black hair, kohl around the eyes, piercing and tattoos that looked real. This girl, and when the one sat with her, always wore black and always wore bland expressions of everything in the world bored them to death. But maybe not everything did, because the girl pointed at Abby and asked, "You want to sit with us at lunch?" Abby didn't get a chance to respond to an invitation because the bus reached school. As soon as it stopped, everyone stumbled for the exit. Some of the kids gave Abby over-the-shoulder glances as they went, and not even the golf girls or Gus lingered to talk to Abby outside the bus. Abby's bus was just one of the long lines of yellow behemoths dithering kids onto the wide concentration walkways in front of her school. The air was thick, and the smell of exhaust and the usual ruckus of shouted conversation, laughter, and receiving engines created a start of the day chaos. Abby hoisted her backpack in a stroll towards the school entrance. She took a stuttering step, though. When she realized Daniel was walking next to her, Abby smiled over him, suddenly feeling shy. Are you ever going to go back? Daniel asked. Abby thought Daniel had a nice voice, a little deeper than most boys' voices. He smelled good, too. Not like boiled cabbage. He smelled like cinnamon. Abby wasn't sure why. Back to Freddy's? Daniel certified. Abby shook her head. No, my friends, the animatronics are broken. Mike said he'll fix them someday. Abby shrugged, but he's been saying that for a while. Abby stopped and turned to look at Daniel. Up close, he could see that he had light freckles on his cute nose. Wait, she said. So you actually believe me? She looked around. I'm pretty sure everyone else just thinks I make this stuff up. The school bell's harsh jangle up through the rest of the clamoring outside the school. Abby picked up her pace. Daniel matched her. Daniel looked over. He grinned. I believe in UFOs and ghosts, so why not haunted animatronics?